Hello, this is Giancarlo Solar. I'm recording part of a series for Battlefront Living History Group. And today we're going to talk about the standard pistol, service pistol for the German army in the Second World War, which was the P38. The P38 was adopted in 1938, but production started in the middle of 1940. Originally, the German army in the First World War, the service pistol was the P08 Luger in 9x19 millimeter. However, it was considered costly to produce in time, material, and financial costs. And the P38 was accepted to replace it in 1938. In 1938, Walther produced the Armee Pistola, which was similar to the P38, but which did not have an exposed hammer. It also was different in other things, such as, for example, it accepted in some variants a shoulder stock. A number of these pistols were tested by the German army, and then they asked for the exposed hammer. So the variant that was produced was called the Heere Pistola, army pistol. A number of test models were produced, and these were accepted with minor modifications. So in 1938, the P38 was adopted for use by the German army. This variant here is a Walther HP. So again, although it's a P38, it's called the HP or Heere Pistol or Army Pistol. Although this is the commercial variant. So the commercial variant was called the HP, produced by Walther. And the military accepted version was called the P38, again made by Walther, but later on also made by Mauser and by Spreewerke. They were exactly the same pistol, even though the designation was different. But of course, the markings would be different. These were amongst this is an example of one of the first variants which was actually produced, and these were given, or rather bought, by the Swedish army. This is the HP variant. And as you can see, this pistol is in very, very good condition. They were used for a number of years. However, they were well kept because, well, Sweden was to a large degree neutral in the Second World War. So, as you can see, the P38 is a semi-automatic pistol with a mostly exposed barrel. You had an external hammer, the standard design with a slide, which obviously recoils on shooting. The barrel was locked with a specific lug which was under the barrel, a moving lock mechanism, so that the barrel moved forwards straight, which was an advantage on accuracy. Was locked with this block until it moved backwards with the slide. Then the block fell down and the barrel was disengaged from the slide. The slide kept on recoiling backwards to eject the spent cartridge, and then came forwards to take up the next cartridge, and the process cocking the hammer for the next shot. But what is interesting about the P38, in this case this is the HP, but it's the same pistol, was that it was the first single action, double action pistol to be accepted in service, and I will demonstrate. So, and show safe. So as you can see, the hammer fell down in operating the mechanism. That's because the safety is on and the safety will drop the hammer. So the mechanism, you had an exposed barrel, mostly exposed barrel. As the pistol was shot, the barrel moved backwards straight, did not drop. Locking was achieved using a specific mechanism with a block which locked the hammer, the barrel to the slide, until the slide was moving backwards. When the slide moved backwards, the barrel was then, the block fell, the barrel was stopped from moving backwards, and the slide continued backwards to eject the cartridge, and then cock the hammer, and then come forwards to load the next cartridge. The fact that the barrel was moving backwards straight rather than dropping actually aided in the accuracy. What I would like to demonstrate is actually the safety mechanism. So if the gun was loaded and you put it on fire and you cocked the action, so in this case the cartridge would be loaded, and one of the features of the pistol, it had a loaded chamber indicator. So this pin over here at the back would actually protrude, so you could see it and you could also feel it with your thumb. So it's loaded, and the hammer is prepared to fire the first shot in single action. However, if you operate the safety mechanism, the hammer drops. I'll show that again. So as you operate the safety mechanism, the hammer drops. So then you have the loaded pistol, but the hammer has fallen. Now if you keep it on safety, it's safe, and operating the trigger will have no effect. However, you put it on fire, the trigger moves forward, and now the pistol operates in double action. So this was the first single action, double action pistol adopted by any major force. This was again a patented Walther design, which was first implemented in the Walther PP and PPK pistols way back from 1929. It was a major feature, and it was incorporated in this P38 pistol, which was adopted by the German army. It was a very advanced design at the time. So I've now brought out another variant of the P38. So this is practically identical to the Walther, but this is made by a different factory. The P38 was manufactured by Walther, the original contractor and designer. Mauser, when they stopped Luger production, there was a changeover to the P38 production, and Spreewerke, and this is a Spreewerke P38. So this was produced later in the war. So we can tell that it's a Spreewerke because the code now is CYQ, which is for Spreewerke. The Waffenamt is also different. It's again with P38, the serial number on the slide and on the frame. The machining now is more visible, so the finish is a little bit more hurried. The grips are also slightly different. They're still Bakelite, but basically they're black instead of being brown. But what is different in this particular one later on in the war, the hammer was slightly different. This is the late war hammer, one of the minor variations later in the war. So this is a late war version. This would be, in fact, this is 6843X. So this is 6843, but in the X, so going from A to X, it's obviously later on in the production run for that particular year. I think this would be 1944 or 1945. And you can see that even with the lack of materials and manpower later on the war, the service pistol was considered to be important, and production continued to the end of the war. So, thank you very much for your interest.